All right, now I want to go over sort of the skill of your response. This is one of the pillars we talked about. How are you going to respond when your dog makes the decision to come back to you, or when your dog turns to come back to you, for example? Your response really matters. So again, I kind of mentioned this in the pillars video, but the truth is, like, a lot of us, sometimes we have this mentality of like, if I ask my dog to come back, they must come back. And so that may lead you to saying something like, I'm going to use my dog's name, Rip, as an example, but I might say, Rip, come. And so I'm expecting him to come back because I said the command. At face value, there's nothing wrong with that. I totally understand it. I just don't want to sound like that with my dogs. I don't know how to explain that. There are other situations, even with the sit. I'll often say the word please to my dogs just to remind myself to be like looser about my language. So I might be like, Nova, could you please sit? Or Rip, could you please sit? You know, like those kinds of things. So with the recall, I don't tend to start with that kind of boring command like Rip, come. I just don't do that. That's not my spirit of the way I want to teach off leash. We can get to that, and we can very intentionally practice boring recalls and require them to come back. So we can be a brick wall. We could be really like linear and just very normal, I guess, or intense. But that's something we can almost add as like a higher level of understanding. But in the beginning, we want our dog to come back to us. We want them to have muscle memory of coming back to us and it being a really fun moment. We want them to hustle back, and we want them to want to engage with us when they get back. So how you do it matters. So a couple things that I would suggest, and then I'm going to model it for you in a video here in a minute. It's nice and chilly out here. So a couple things that I would say. Your scaffolding matters. So I'm going to give you an example if your dog's on a 5-foot leash, because it doesn't matter if your dog's on a 5-foot leash and you're practicing and you call them to you and they come back and they turn towards you, or if your dog's 200 yards away. It's the same concept, right? Okay, so when I call a dog, I'm usually at about 30 to 40%, let's say, animated energy, excitable energy. So I'm not at 90, I'm not at 100. So if down here is like, we're at essentially, let's say 10% here, this would be like Rip, come. And that would be like one command, very boring, very, straightforward, that kind of thing. To me, that's like a 10%. A 30 to 40%, maybe 50 at the most, would be something like Rip, come. And then I would do some audibles, like some support with my sounds, because dogs are often very sound motivated. So a lot of times I'll do something where I pat my legs. I'll be like, Rip, come, like that. Or I'll do like, Rip, come, brrr. Like those kinds of weird little sounds. I know that seems strange, but that's really, really important. But even still, I'm only at about 30 to 40% intensity level. So because you're scaffolding in your training, it's not likely your dog's gonna fail that often. So like if your dog can't come back to you on a 10-foot leash, then you should be working on a 5-foot leash or a 6-foot leash, for example. So you're scaffolding with the hopes that you could have a lot of successful reps and very few failures. And in the beginning, you really don't want to fail too much at all. Excuse me. All right, so my call to the dog is at about 30 to 40% intensity and excitable energy. Again, it's like, Rip, come. That kind of thing. I add all that in. I want to be dynamic. Then the moment the dog turns their head to me, I elevate from that 30 to 40% up to like 90% of excitement, like 80 to 90%. So it would sound like this, and it would look like this too. It would be like, Rip, come, brrr, whatever. And then all of a sudden he turns his head and I go, whoa, my gosh, you did it. And my hands usually go up, and then I'm running backwards to create that prey drive, or to sort of harness that prey drive that a lot of dogs will have. And so I'm instantly even more interesting than that 30 to 40%. And I jump up quickly, and it's very visual. Dogs are very body language oriented. So if you're standing there like a brick wall and you say, Rip, come. Yes, I know, we'll get to that. Like, yes, the dog must come back. But again, like I said in that pillar video, we've got to be more interesting than that if we want the relationship to be really, really special as time goes on in this context, right, of off-leash. So, like I said, later, I think it's actually really important to practice the boring recalls. I know that seems strange. I'm very intentional the way I scaffold. I want to scaffold the distraction level in the recalls. I want to scaffold the length of the leash or the drag line in the recalls or the distance of the recalls. I want to scaffold the intense energy of my voice. Again, that could be, or the intensity of my voice. It could be like, Rip, come, and I'm expecting my dog to come back, or it could be like, Rip, come, you know, a little louder, crazy, wild, excited. Either way, at the end of our story, the whole point is that the dog will come back, right? That's at the end of all this training, that's our goal. But first, we've got to get the muscle memory for the dog, of the dog remembering that something fun is going to happen when he or she runs back to you, that you're interested in their return, that you're fun. You're a fun person when they run back to you. They're going to wonder, like, what's he going to do? You know, is he going to make me chase food? Is his voice going to be fun and exciting? Is he going to have a toy in his pocket? Is he going to have me do a task like sit or touch or things like that? I want your dog thinking. I want my dogs thinking about those things. And the only way you could do that is really creating the memory of excitement and fun. Give them a nice dopamine hit of their success. Let them feel like they achieved something really big. Okay? So I hope that kind of makes sense. There's a lot to, more to that, and I'm going to act it out, but I just wanted you to hear, that's my perspective. It's really important to think of, like, when you're training, first, your scaffolding has to be in place. If you're not scaffolding right, then you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Your ratio should be super high success rate as you're going through this process, depending on where you are. 5-foot leash, cool. 10-foot leash, cool. Whatever. 20-foot leash, drag line, 50-foot, 100-foot, out in the field somewhere with a 100-foot drag line, dropping the leash. Whatever the scaffolding is, you've got to handle that, because if you jump too far too quickly, you're stepping on your own toes and you're going to create frustration. So keep that in mind. So leaning on the idea that we're going to have a high success rate at whatever level you're at based on your dog's capabilities, then harness that excitement, that energy that would make your dog want to run back to you. Okay? And then we'll talk about food. There's a lot of things with this, all right? But that's the beginning thing I wanted to go over, really, really important. 30 to 40% as a norm of excitement. Then the moment they turn their head towards you or their body towards you, elevate quickly to that 90% area where you're just like, oh my God, you did it, oh my gosh. And create that prey drive, harness that prey drive, all those kinds of things, okay? All right, hope this helps. Next video in a moment. Nice and chilly out here.